on forever. And so David can be seen as that righteous man. And we talked about how this was a psalm that's something to aspire to. It's something to try to live up to, so that when we are in our twilight and when we're ready to breathe our last, we can look down backwards through our lives and we can tell ourselves that I walked in my integrity. I walked with God. And then we talked about why we don't do such a thing. What keeps us from being able to say that? Sorry, we're going through the PowerPoint here again. And that was stumbling blocks. Now, if you've never heard this phrase before, it's a phrase that's throughout the Bible. Stumbling blocks, we'll go ahead and go back through the definitions here. It's an obstacle to progress, something that causes you to stumble in the way that you're walking. It's an impediment to belief or understanding. It's something that cuts under your faith, okay? Stumbling block, it's easy to understand. It's something that causes you to stumble in your faith. And then we talked about, well, what kind of stumbling blocks do we come across? And there was one, it was the stumbling blocks that others put in front of you. And then there are the stumbling blocks that you put in front of others. And then, of course, secondly, there are the stumbling blocks that we put in front of ourselves. And we spent last week talking about the first one, the first half. Those that we put in front of others and those that others put in front of us. We talked about how kids have to deal with bullying and peer pressure at school. You kids over there, you know that other kids at your school are going to throw stumbling blocks in front of you for no other reason than to see you fall. You know that. You experienced that. We talked about how we put stumbling blocks in front of others with such things as gossiping, and how gossiping can not only tear friendships apart, but can tear congregations apart, because eventually it's going to get back to the person you're gossiping about that somebody's been talking behind their backs. So we talked about all those kinds of stumbling blocks that others put in front of us and that we put in front of others. But this week we're going to talk about the second half, and that's stumbling blocks that we put in front of ourselves. Why would we put stumbling blocks in front of ourselves? Why would we want to fall? Why would we choose to stumble in our faith?
An excuse for sin.
It's an excuse. Okay? If we can convince ourselves that it's okay to fall, we can convince ourselves that sin is okay even if it's just for a little while. Right away, you might think of addictions. And that's a great example. An addiction it's a great example of a stumbling block you put in front of yourself because you constantly go back to the source. It's a hole that never gets filled. So you keep trying to fill it. You keep going back to that addiction. And so you keep falling. You keep stumbling. That's too easy. That's too easy to be an example. We're not going to go there. We all know that addictions are stumbling blocks to ourselves. And we all know of someone in our lives, in our circle, who has gone through some kind of addiction. Maybe they're going through it right now. So that's too easy of an example. We're going to dig deeper into stumbling blocks that we put in front of ourselves. So what might more examples be of a stumbling block that you put in front of yourself? Dennis.
Worldliness would probably be one, James, because a lot of times we tend to be like Lot's wife. We want to kind of look back and see how things were and remember that, and sometimes just forget about the faith that we need to have.
No, you're exactly right, and that's exactly where I wanted to start off with worldly goals. We all are told that we need to have goals in our life. We need to be goal-driven people. And especially concerning our careers, or if you're students, you need to have some kind of goal in your scholastic life to decide where you're going to take it. But what happens when that goal, that worldly goal, interferes with your godly life? You remember how we talked about a couple of weeks ago, how we try to have it all? We try to have all the bonuses, that secular fun. We try to have all that fun and at the same time convince ourselves that we are a godly people, that we walk with God while at the same time walking with the great dollar bill. What happens when those goals interfere with your godly life? Say it's a goal at work. Your goal is to get that promotion. Because if you could just get that promotion, things will be so much better. You won't have to work for that idiot that you work for right now. You won't have to work with those idiots that you work with right now. Maybe they'll answer to you. Maybe you won't work as many hours. Maybe the work won't be as hard. Maybe you'll get a corner office with a window. And so you put in extra hours. You come in on weekends and holidays. Maybe you miss the service every now and again. But it's only every now and again. You're there most of the time. Maybe you start working nights. You want to show that you're devoted to your job. You want to show your boss that you deserve that promotion, so you start working nights, putting in more and longer hours because you want that promotion. Maybe you miss Wednesday nights every now and again. It's no big deal. It's just Bible study. You tell yourself. I can remember I had a falling out with my grandmother about Little League. Me and my brothers, we grew up with baseball in our blood. It was the sport of the family. It wasn't football, it wasn't basketball, it was baseball. And so we practiced when season came around. It was Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night. We played games on Saturday. We didn't play on Sunday, but we practiced Wednesday nights. And I can remember my grandmother coming to my house and fussing me out because I was missing Wednesday nights going to Bible study. And we had a big falling out, and I started going to another congregation that was in town. Me and my brothers did because he was on my side. But I never got the chance to tell her that she was right. She's gone now. But it stuck with me forever because at some point in time, you have to decide which you're going to serve, don't we? We talked about that. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. You cannot serve both God and mammon. You cannot serve in a worldly life at the same time giving your devotion to God. It has to be one or the other. So what happens when those goals get in the way?
James, you just made a very good point about the grandmother, what people fail to understand. They think that when you're teaching God's word or living an example, that we're going to see the results. We may be dead and gone when the results happen, just like with you. You never forgot what your grandmother done.
That's true.
See what I'm saying? She may not be here, but I mean, nevertheless, she instilled something in you that mattered.
Yeah.
And that, like God said, we sow the seeds. He's going to be the one that it's going to be whether or not it falls on fertile soil or whatever. But we may not see the results of what we're doing, but you do it anyway. You have prayer that that it's going to work or whatever. Everybody that you talk to is not going to be obedient.
No, it's very true. And mothers and grandmothers have a special connection to their children, their grandchildren, and that they never give up on them. Something that's very special to witness. But what if it's not a goal at work? What if you're satisfied with where you are? You come to Bible study on Wednesday nights, like you're right here right now. You come to worship on Sundays. I mean, there are jobs that require you to work on some Sundays and Wednesdays. I have to travel out of town every now and again on weekends. I have to put in late nights every now and again. But what matters is where you put that effort, where you try your hardest to be. But what if it's not a goal at work? What if you're trying to save up for something? What if you've got the plans to that dream house in your study and all you can think about is saving up that money to build that dream house? What if you got a car you've been driving by the lot every now and again and you just got your eye on that car and man, that looks sweet. And you want to work as hard as you can to save up money for that thing. Do earthly goals get in our way? But who puts them there? We do. We choose. And that's what it comes down to, is a choice. You either choose God or you choose not God. You can't have it both ways. And so we put these stumbling blocks in front of ourselves. Let's turn over to Ecclesiastes chapter 12. I'm glad you kids are in here tonight because Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verses 6 through 8, are directed at folks kind of like you. All right, we're going to start in verse 6, Ecclesiastes chapter 12. Remember him. Who's him? God. Remember him before the silver cord is broken and the golden bowl is crushed. The pitcher by the well is shattered and the wheel at the cistern is crushed. Then the dust, and that's you and me, the dust will return to the earth as it was, and the spirit will return to God. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. All is vanity. We see what he's getting at here? All of those things that we want to strive after, that we want to save for and work hard for, all these things are nothingness. They're nothing. In the grand scheme of things, that dream house is going to go to somebody else. That sweet ride that you want so badly, you're going to want another one in a couple of years. These are all nothing. They're worldly nothingness. It's vanity, vanity of vanities. All is vanity except what? Choosing a godly life. So when we put these earthly goals, or these desires that we want so badly, when we want these things, is that a bad thing? Is it a bad thing to want that dream house? Is it a bad thing to want that promotion? Is it a bad thing to want that sweet new ride? No. What's bad is when you put that in front of God. God will accept no other place in your life but first. And that goes for me too. Like I say, when I'm putting these little talks together, I'm talking to myself before I'm talking to anybody else. But let's look even further. Matthew chapter 16, if you would. Matthew chapter 16. So the question is, when we're talking about these stumbling blocks we put in front of ourselves, isn't necessarily, is that what you're going after evil? It's what are you giving up in order to secure that thing you want so badly? Starting verse 24. Then Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? If you work so hard that you forget the God that gave you the blessings you're working so hard to get, what good does it do you? If you achieve every worldly goal you set out to achieve, and at the end of all things, God says, depart from me, I never knew you, what has it gained us? Here and now is what we should be after. Building each other up, studying God's Word, and applying it to our lives to live a more godly life tomorrow than we did today. But we choose from time to time to cast these stumbling blocks in front of ourselves and to trip our own selves up. Look at it another way. How many are familiar with our government's model when it comes to money in and money out? Bob, I'm sure you know this. Our government is operating under a model of deficit spending. The general idea is if they've got $100 in the treasury, they're going to spend $200 under the assumption that taxation will then backfill that $100 they overspent. 16 some odd trillion dollars, or was it $19 trillion later? It's clear that doesn't work. But we try the very same thing when it comes to a godly life, whether we realize it or not. Because when we put these stumbling blocks in front of ourselves, we're telling ourselves, I'm going to pursue this for now. I'll make it up to God on the back end when I'm older. I'm going to pursue this promotion now. I'm going to miss a service every now and again, no big deal. I'll miss Bible study for a couple of months, no big deal. I'll make it up on the back end when I'm older, when I'm wiser, or when I'm less busy building my worldly life and I've got nothing better to do. Remember, we talked about giving God our leftovers versus our first fruits. We try to do a deficit spending model in our godly lives sometimes because we choose to pursue the world first, thinking that when we get older and less busy, we'll work things out with God. We'll make that up on the back end. And sooner or later, when I'm older becomes when I'm old, because I've still got things to do. I've still got places to go see I've never seen before. So I need to work more and save up more to go those places and to do those things. And then old becomes forgetfulness. And we forget God because we choose at times to put these stumbling blocks in front of ourselves. Let's turn to James chapter 4 real quick.
The thing about that is we're not promised we're going to get old. So the back end might not ever come.
Funny you should say that. James chapter 4, starting verse 13. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city and spend a year there and engage in business and make a profit. Yet you do not know what your life will be like tomorrow. You are just a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and also do this or that. But as it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. Therefore, now listen here, because apathy is a big part of having a stumbling block that you put in front of yourself. Therefore, to one who knows the right thing to do and does not do it, to him it is sin. If you know that this is where you ought to be, that this book is the book you ought to be reading, that the godly life is a life that you are supposed to be pursuing, and you choose worldliness first, it's very clear, to him that knows the right thing to do and does it not, to him that is sin. But how often do we choose the world before God? Because these pleasures we pursue, we cast them in front of our feet to trip and fall all over them. Sometimes I think it's because we're in a little bit of denial as to exactly what this life is. So we're going to have a little elementary exercise. Everybody's going to close your eyes. We're going to pretend. So close your eyes. Everybody, please, just bear with me for just a moment. I want you to imagine something, and I'm going to ask you to imagine something you've probably never imagined before. I want you to imagine what it's like to not exist. What's in your head? What are you picturing? Are you picturing blackness? No. That's breaking the rules. Blackness exists. Picture what it means to not exist. You can give up now because I'm going to tell you right now, you can't do it. You cannot imagine what it's like to not exist because all your life you have existed. That's all you know. Because that's all there is. There is no getting out of this. There is no way around this. There is only one God, and his covenant is written here in blood. You cannot get out of it. There is no getting around it. There is no amount of denial that will get you out of the existence you are in. And what is that sole purpose in our existence? What did we talk about just a couple of weeks ago? What is that meaning of life that so many people strive to find, but they look in all the wrong places? Where did we find that? I'll give you a hint. We were just there in that book. Ecclesiastes chapter 12. Starting verse 13. The conclusion when all has been heard is, fear God and keep his commandments, because this applies to every person. And depending on which version you have, it could say, this is man's all. Our all, our whole existence is to do God's will, not our own. So, how do we go about avoiding the casting of these stumbling blocks we put in front of ourselves?
James?
Yes, sir.
You touched on so many huge points of the Bible that stick out to me personally. Matthew 16:24 is probably one of my favorite Bible verses there is. And it helps to remind, to help me remind myself of a daily commitment to God. Now, the world that we live in today, we're talking realistically, makes it that much harder for each and every one of us to make that commitment come true. And I think that we've put Christianity, I think we take Christianity a little too lightly from what Jesus Christ did for us when he died on the cross, that we just kind of go through the, you just go through the motions, yeah. Thank you. That you go through the motions of, day in and day out of being a Christian, but when you were baptized, when you had that sin washed away from you, emotionally, God knows our heart. He knows everything about us. And if we think that we can hide anything from him, or if we think that if we're putting anything in front of him, he knows that.
Yeah.
And there comes a burden on your heart. And when you feel the burden, that's God. You're obviously doing something wrong. And when that burden weighs so heavy on somebody, they have almost no choice but to give it up. But then comes an ease. Oh, well, I gave my life to God. Now I'm going to go about my Christianity. I'm going to heaven, but it feels like the work there is done. It stops there. And so a lot of people, I feel, myself included, not talking to anybody pointing at self, but my own self included, take it really lightly on a day-to-day basis, whereas Jesus Christ, I don't think he took it lightly when he was having nails driven into his hands and his feet.
Yep. But do you remember what we talked about a couple of weeks ago about that old formula, that old ruse we were all sold, the bill of goods? You kids weren't here, so I'll fill you in. Your parents may hate me for it, but it's something you need to hear. We've all been sold the bill of goods in this country, and that is what some call the American dream, which is to have it all. But it's an old formula that you're taught in school, because we're all told that our first duty as students is to become educated, to get as much education as you can get. And why is that? Because if you get that good education, you can get that good job. And what does that good job get you? gets you good money. And that good money gets you all those things that you want. That good money allows you the pursuit of happiness, which is guaranteed in our Constitution. And that is what they're going to tell you is the meaning of life. To get educated, to get a good job, to get good money, to buy many things, and pursue your happiness, because that's the meaning of life, isn't it? But that's the bill of goods we're sold. And so as we go through our school, and we go through more school, and we go through more school, and we get a great job, and we work our way up the ladder, and we work hard, we put our noses to the grindstone, we show the boss that, hey, I'm committed, I'm here days, I'm here nights, I'm here weekends, I'm here holidays. We work our way on up. Eventually you get to be my age, and you remember, oh, I'm supposed to be studying this book. But the world doesn't want you to study that book, because that makes you less fun, less productive. So Chris, when you're talking about how sometimes we forget exactly how much devotion Christianity calls for, it's because we are sold that bill of goods to pursue our own happiness first. And that's supposed to include our own version of religion if we so choose, but the happiness is all-encompassing. Christianity is just supposed to be a Sunday part of it. But let's talk about James chapter 3. And Anita brought this up last Wednesday night, just as we were about wrapping up, and this is what we were working our way up to, is James chapter 3. This is the beginning of understanding self-control. Because maybe that's where our struggle begins, is self-control. Because after all, if we're tripping over blocks that we're throwing out there in front of ourselves, we have a problem. And it starts here. So let's read verses 1 and 2. Let not many of you become teachers, my brethren, knowing that as such we will incur a stricter judgment. For we all stumble in many ways. If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able to bridle the whole body as well. Now, James says here, let not many of you become teachers. He's not trying to discourage anyone who puts in the effort to be a teacher. If we recall, first century Christianity, the first century church, was suffering a great deal from false teachers, especially from Judaizers who were trying to bring in bits and parts of the old law into this new way as a matter of gaining themselves prestige. And that's what he's warning against, is these false teachers. These Judaizers who want to bring in the old law and slap that on everybody. He's saying, no, that's not the way. And when he says here, if one does not stumble in what he says, that's the beginning. That's the very beginning of learning self-control. What did our mamas always tell us? If you can't say something nice, don't say a thing. How much better of a world would we live in if we all abided by that saying? Oh, wise mama. If you don't have anything nice and uplifting to say, shut your trap and don't say a thing. If we could just abide by that, imagine how much more self-control we'd have. Right? Right? I knew you guys were paying attention. All right, let's go on verse 3. Now if we put the bits into the horses' mouths so that they will obey us, we direct the entire body as well. Look at the ships also. They are so great and are driven by strong winds, are still directed by a very small rudder wherever the inclination of the pilot desires. So also the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it boasts of great things. Small things doing great things. James is very illustrative here in his painting the tongue as something that has so great a control over something so complex as the mind and body. Think about airplanes, big jets, all controlled by a stick in the cockpit. Think about all this. You ever been on a speedboat, sailing boat? Well, they're all controlled by that rudder. The wind will blow it wherever it wants to. The power in that motor will drive it wherever it wants to. That rudder is what steers it. Just like the tongue controls this. Small things doing great things.
I did bring my Bible, thank you.
Good job.
On verse 3, I say the person that can bridle the tongue can bridle his whole body. And that's just basically what you was just saying.
Yes.
And if you're wanting to get into verse 5 and 6, it says, even so the tongue is a little member, boasts its great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindleth it. I've got a note in here. A small spark can set fire to an entire forest.
Yes, some of the greatest forest fires we know of were started by something so small as a spent cigarette.
Exactly. And in my notes that I have, where it goes from 6, and the tongue is a fire of the world of iniquity, so the tongue among our members that is defiled the whole body and set it on fire, the course of nature, and it is set on fire of hell. Nature in this sentence here means the whole of human existence. It will
Mhm.
mean the tongue will destroy human existence as we know it.
Yeah, let's read real quick. We're going right there. Verses 6 through 8. And the tongue is a fire, the very world of iniquity. The tongue is set among our members as that which defiles the entire body and sets on fire the course of our life and is set on fire by hell. Every species of beasts and birds, of reptiles and creatures of the sea is tamed and has been tamed by the human race. But no one can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil and full of deadly poison. And that's exactly where we were going there. That it's a deadly poison set on fire by the very fires of hell. Look at all the calamities that have come in our world. Look at the Third Reich. Anybody know what the Third Reich is on this or over here? Anybody remember a guy named Adolf Hitler? Nazi Germany. How did the Third Reich go from meetings in secret rooms to being the controlling force behind one of the most devastating calamities that's ever occurred on this planet? Because one guy was a great speaker. Now, it's about all we have time for, but I want to make one more point. We're going to go into Matthew chapter 15 real quick. Matthew chapter 15, we're going to read verse 11, and then we're going to skip over to verse 15. It is not what enters into the mouth that defiles the man, but what proceeds out of the mouth, this defiles the man. And down to verse 15. Peter said to him, explain the parable to us. And Jesus said, are you still lacking in understanding also? Do you not understand that everything that goes into the mouth passes into the stomach and is eliminated? But the things that proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and those defile the man. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witnesses, slanders. These are the things which defile the man, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile the man. What comes out of our mouths is what defiles us. And it all starts here. The tongue is just a gateway. If I struggle with lying, I struggle because the lie is born in my heart, but not until my heart, my mind, tells my tongue to speak it, is it said aloud. But when it is, there's no getting it back. So that's our ending thought for the night, is that what comes out of our mouths defiles us. So this week, our challenge is, if we can't say nothing nice, if we can't lift up each other in what we say, shut our traps and let's just not say anything at all.
Hey, James, can I say something right at
Is it nice?
I had a stumbling block this week, but
you're not going? I said, no, I'm going to go ahead and do my work. And so that really struck with me. And then I made arrangements to go with Howard and work him up. I said, well, I'm not going to do that again. I went to Howard's funeral, and I was really glad I did, because I was amazed at all the people that were there at the funeral, you know, from the church. And I got to meet some of his family that I hadn't never met. And it was really, you know, it was an uplifting experience to hear those ministers speak. And Butch Jones even said, you know, Howard was our family, because a lot of his family was so far away. He
Yeah.
depended on the church family here. You know, we did a lot for him. So that made me, you know, feel good that I was able to go. Sometimes we have those stumbling blocks come, we make arrangements, change at the last minute, and I'm not going to do that again.
Well, you know, you're not alone, because it's sometimes we're afraid to choose what we know is right over work, because we're afraid of what's the boss going to say? Is my reputation going to suffer? Am I going to miss out on that promotion I'm working so hard for? But let's remember that it's never wrong to choose the godly thing over everything else. Any more thoughts, any more questions?
James, real quick, I was waiting before you finished because I didn't want to steal it if you had it written down, but Matthew 6, verses 19 through 21 stuck out to me whenever you're talking about the first part of this lesson. And I'll go ahead and read it. It says, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also.
Amen. All right. Let's close with a word of prayer. Our God and Father in heaven, Lord, we're so very thankful that you are our God, that you are our Father in heaven, and that you have given your word to us to study and to learn from and to use as our roadmap to living a godly life. And I pray, Lord, that every one of us may live a more godly life tomorrow than we did today, and that we may all gather back here on Sunday to offer up our worship to you. Pray in Jesus' name. Amen.